concurrent users, it gets pretty rough on the machine. You see, it doesn't even move much right now. Yep, a few did go through. The problem is with concurrency, the more concurrently go onto the web server, the more the PHP, FPM, or other services have to work, and they basically cancel each other out in the end. And in the sense of who gets to answer a certain request, they will increase the load and not work anymore, basically. Okay, so we did a bit better, arguably. Better, but not good enough. The idea now is, of course, that it's basically the same as if you would put a varnish in front of the server or some other tools you can think about. What we're going to do is we have a fast CGI cache. Basically, we will cache any answer from any PHP daemon, and we're going to cache the data coming from it for around 10 minutes right now, with a native timeout of 2 minutes. And we have some configurations which say, like, the cache key is the URL, basically, with the URI and the arguments. We're going to use a stale cache if there's an error, HTTP 500 error or invalid header, so we shouldn't get 500 errors anymore to the customer, basically, if there is a cache. And we're gonna ignore the expires and set cookie and cache control because they are not really helping our case right now. And the PHP part, where we actually going to use the cache, we set up a skip cache variable. That means that in certain cases I don't want to use the cache. Basically, for example, if I use the backend, or if I have a EID or a IHX like call, maybe we don't want to cache that. I decide not to cache it. We're going to not cache it if we have the backend TYPO3 user or the backend typo, the front-end typo user cookie set. Then we're going to skip the cache as well, because arguably there will be content visible which doesn't belong in the cache or should be cached differently if I want to use that. I could, of course, add these variables to the cache key. If I'm inclined to do so, then I would cache by user session as well. And the fast CGI cache bypass option just checks if it's true or false. If it's false in that case, bypass it. No, it's false, so we don't bypass it. And then we're going to use this cache we just defined. And we have I added a header to the xfastCGI cache header, so I can see what my actual status was. That's for debugging purposes, of course. All that is in my NGINX 2. So I'm going to switch again to my NGINX 2 configuration, restart the server and everything. Let's check, everything is running. So we're going to do the same again. There's still some warm-up, but we can see there's going on much more now. We still have some hosts down. That could be as well with my connection here. But you see, that's a lot of more traffic we're going to put through now. And that's almost the same configuration. Of course, we're going to cache it out. But now we had 216 successful transactions. That's something you can phone home to. Let's try a bit more concurrent. No root host. That's not good. Let's wait. I have to say as well, I have a bit of a temperature problem here, but it's still connected. Give it a clean slate. Restart service is a script I wrote which just cycles through all the stuff I'm going to use. And it will clear the fast CGI cache. So the server is under siege and it's warming up again. Looks good. Those are all successful page views. Of course, I'm just looking at the HTML of the page, not the images and stuff like that. They are not downloaded. It's just the rendering of the web page right now. 180 transactions. So still, it's much better than before, obviously. But in the beginning, you saw there's still like a small hiccup. And the load is still going up. The problem is that all that cache needs to be warmed up. And if two concurrent users or requests request the same resource, both resources are rendered. Of course, only one goes into the cache, but both are rendered at that point in time. And that's something we want to try to overcome. NGINX gives us a feature here that basically says use the stale cache while it's updating. So if the cache is updating, if one NGINX child has a request for this resource, wait until it's updated. And fast CGI cache background update on means that that all other childs that get the same request for the same resource will wait until the first cache is built and then just delivers the cache. So only one process is doing the actual update of the cache information of the rendered website. And the fast CGI cache log on means that the file is locked. As long as the file is locked, nobody is reading it and waiting to do the cache. Again, I'm going to switch my configuration to NGINX 3. Okay. So I'm going to start again with the 200 concurrent sessions, the last one we just updated. And if you look closely on the load, it even goes down a bit now. We are talking about 90% load instead of 100% load. And you see there is, I stopped it right now, there's requests coming through over and over. The advantage here is if one cache goes stale, it's old, the old one is still used unless it's recreated with a new one. So the first process that discovers, hey, this cache is old, will recreate the new one, mark it as that it's been recreated, it's been updated, and the others will either wait or, in that case, if there's a valid stale cache, will just use the older cache for a few seconds, basically. We are talking about seconds here. That means, okay, somebody is going to see the old news headline for a few more seconds, and then the next one gets the new news headline. And from then on, everybody gets the new news headline. Let's give it a bit more, try the limits, but that's probably not going to do with the interface. This is a Raspberry Pi 3B. It does 1 gigabit of internet, of network connection. The problem is the interface is still a USB interface. It's like a USB dongle built into the motherboard, and that means that it's just as fast as the USB allows in that case, which is not that much. That's too much. Too many open files. That could be my descriptor table as well locally. Okay, it's doing the warm-up. A bit slow in the beginning, full load. But now even with 300 concurrent connections, the load is manageable. The processor percentage, the load is manageable. And we still get some 85 successful transactions. That's because it goes down because the concurrency is too high now. If we do it with 200, you see it's like just running through. And the machine itself, it's not all on the right side. Let's wait and see what the statistics are. It's calculating. Those were 4,768 successful transactions from this little machine as fast as it goes. So, I would say that's pretty cool. The problem with this kind of caching is that everything gets cached for a specific time. In practice, I wouldn't use like 10 minutes or something, but even a cache time of 10 seconds is enough to make a difference between having a dead server and a server that is still responding. So if every content is cached 10 seconds and it's used until a new content is created, that's a lot already. It doesn't help much for user sessions and stuff, or for really interactive sessions, but it will go a long way. Varnish is doing basically the same. If you put a varnish in front of it, it's the same thing that you do. It's just you add another process or even another server, basically. You can do, of course, with the NGINX, you can do, of course, proxying from several servers as well and do the same caching part. And there is no easy way to purge the cache for a specific page, but it got better with recent NGINX versions. They had an enterprise version of the NGINX tool, and there were tools and mechanics available which allowed you to purge specific pages or to purge specific caches. Parts of these tools are now available in the newer NGINX versions, like from 16 or 17 on as well, if you're going to use this technology. There you could purge the cache with a simple curl call on a specific URL. So, but what could we do? What could we do better with the dynamic contents? Like we made that one plugin uncached in TYPO3 for a reason, or have its own cache for a reason. And the idea would be if we could just compartmentalize different parts of the web page, think the header and that special plugin that does a lot of stuff, and the rest of the page, if we could just cache it separately and have it built together. And there's where old technology is coming in. Who knows what SSI is? Yay, there are some old people here. Great. Enter SSI, include virtual, or how web pages were made dynamic in the early 1990s. It worked. It wasn't very feasible, but it worked. Okay, the idea, the thing is, there's an extension for TYPO3, so we come back to TYPO3. It's a TYPO3 convention, so by Nicole Cordes, which does that basically. It takes every user int object in spoken with TYPOscript, user int or COA int object, and caches it away basically, creates a recipe how to execute it, and replaces it with an include virtual tag in the website, in the web page, and the web server then will pull that, apply its own cache to it, and replace the tag with the with this placeholder. that's basically as well what you can do in Varnish and Cloudflare with ESI, where you can, yes, where you can replace certain parts of your static page with dynamic dynamic content. This tool, this extension, will support that as well, and she added the Ajax methodology as well, but it's called via JavaScript. Why is this working? Do you know how TYPO3 deals with uncached content in the process of rendering the page? Some knows, some know. No, nobody's. Some are not in the head. Okay, I'll explain. Basically, when TYPO3 renders the page, it goes through all stuff it needs to render, and once it finds a uncached part like a COA int or a user int object, it will defer the rendering of this part and will actually do something like this. It will write into the page, add later the object here. And once the page is rendered, that part is going into the TYPO3 cache, the page cache, and then the plugins or elements are rendered afterwards and replaced into the page before it's sent to the browser. So basically, it's the same thing. We're just interrupting, this extension is just interrupting that process, and does it with other parts, or in another way. So let's try this. Where I configured the location PHP, I add SSI on. That means that server-side includes are searched for. And I have my cache key, but I need a different cache key for these loaded pages afterwards, because the NGINX will then get the loaded, only the small content part with a different URL, and I need a different cache key for that. That's NGINX internal. It took me days to figure that out, and the solution was 3 lines. But it's always like that, isn't it? Okay. I switch again to my NGINX 4. So, what I did, basically I have the whole site installed twice. Once with the plugin and once without the plugin. The first 3 tries was without the plugin, and I switched now the document root as well to the installation with the plugin, so I don't have to start now to configure a plugin right in front of you. That's a bit boring. And additionally, I will purge the TYPO3 cache as well. So, one way to see that it actually happened right now is to open the login mask of the TYPO3 backend. There will be this, because there is a comment inside the login mask which the browser, the NGINX server actually interprets as a virtual include. I saw it, maybe I put in a patch sometime, so it will be removed. But it has no side effects. It's just a comment inside this mask. And there are no other side effects in any other plugins or modules as far as I saw. Okay. Will run. The thing is, it won't be better than my last run. The reason is because the NGINX has now more to do, because for many pages it will pull some extra content and do some extra turns, so there is a trade-off for that. It is just that the trade-off is leveraged by that, alleviated by the fact that now I have individually cached parts inside my page. I should have built up the cache first. We brute force it. So yeah, basically what's happening now, if you imagine here the web page, these are the news, and this is uncached because news need to be online directly. Now it's a part that's rendered separately in a separate part and inserted in the page by the NGINX server. So there we are. Okay. All the other settings are still the same as in the version before. So there will be a cache written, there will be a stale cache written, a stale cache check, and so on and so on. And you see it's doing quite well once the little guy here decided to start working. And we get a much better throughput than before, but it's not as much as we had before with the pure caching. But it's not bad either. Not bad, yeah. It's cardinal statistic. Still 4,412 4,412 successful transactions. So that's 4,412 pages viewed, where we struggled earlier with 50. Okay. Advantages, effects, the cache control headers for, you can now tell the plugin, basically, your news plugin, it has its own cache control headers. Like, keep this for 5 minutes, or keep that for an hour, or don't cache that, or stuff like that. This will be recognized and honored by NGINX, even for separate parts inside the web page. Uncached content can be delivered directly, but the surrounding page will stay cached and be fast accessible by NGINX. Extension can send their own cache control header based on their needs. The page itself can have its cache control header now properly, because before it will all be smashed together, and if one uncached element is in there, the cache control headers are gone for the page. You can't tell anymore that it's valid for a week or something. The extension itself can make better use of the TYPO3 cache itself, so they can create their own cache. There's a talk for that as well this weekend. And multiple uncached extensions on a single page can be handled separately. So that not the summary of the uncached extensions, but each individually will determine the page. Other cool stuff you can do with the NGINX cache, it could be stored in a Redis enabled for failover servers, so the failover server can use the ready-made cache, or for multiple front-end servers with different IP addresses with rolling DNS to use the same cache all the time. Using the proxy variations like fastCCI cache, proxy underscore cache can be used to consolidate a cloud system and cache parts of it. If you have a Docker-based backend, this can have some advantage as well. And the server-side include technology can be used as well to include widgets from like other frameworks or even other technologies. Questions, discussions, tomatoes, I'm hungry. I will post this talk later and share the URL. All the NGINX configuration is available in my public GitHub account, and you can check it out there. Otherwise, thank you so far.
We are live.
Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to our talk about user experience with TYPO3. So, those who don't know me, I'm Annett, and I'm working in a web agency called Webbit, Gesellschaft für neue Medien in Dresden. And I work there as a TYPO3 developer and integrator. I'm also a member of the Structured Content Initiative. And since last year, I'm also a member of the UX team. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yes, okay. So hello, I am Rachel. I am working in a French web agency called WSales, based in Nantes. I am also, maybe I can, yeah, thank you. I am also the French community lead. I am working with Annett in the Structured Content Initiative too, and I am the UX team lead. And I am also a member of the board.
Yes. Okay, at first I want to explain some terms so that it's clear what we are talking about. So I'm really sure every one of you has or had a user experience today. So maybe if you check into the hotel these days, or maybe you're buying a train ticket these days with your mobile phone or an app you use for that. Maybe you had a user experience by traveling here with the Deutsche Bahn. It's maybe a bad user experience. Yeah, and you can say in general that user experience describes the interaction between me and a product or a service. So, when we talk about user experience, we quickly getting into a discussion about a user interface. So that's why I would like to briefly discuss the differences between it. Yeah. Also, maybe some of you using their bicycles these days more often. I hope so. And yeah, you can say that the user interface from a bicycle is described by the appearance of the bicycle. For example, where does the bell sit? What type of bike is it? Is it a mountain bike? Is it a pedal bike? Yeah, and the user experience describes how well can I handle the bike. So do I enjoy riding the bike? Do I manage to desired distance with the bike? Yeah, or maybe I use a mountain bike in the city. So yeah, that's probably not a good user experience. So if you simplify this a lot, you can say the user interface is always a component of the user experience. And you can say the user interface describes how it looks, and the user experience describes how it feels. So what does both terms mean in the context of the TYPO3 backend? So the user interface answering the following problems for users or customers. Where's the correct module I have to use for my work? Could I find the correct action fast enough? Or did I see only needed stuff in the interface for my current work? And you can say the user experience is more related to questions like, is TYPO3 the right tool for my daily work? Or can I adapt my content fast and efficiently? Or as TYPO3 helping me to improve my daily work or my workflow? And could I reach my goals fast and comfortable? So when we say we had the goal to improve the user experience, yeah, then we have, or is it one of our main goals for the TYPO3 product? We have to reach. How could we reach that? We get fast into some thoughts about the first goal should be improve the customer impression. Yeah, how can we reach that? Yeah, with that the interface from the TYPO3 backend tells a good user story. And maybe we need a consistent interface for that. And we also want to be future-proofed, or a future-proof product. And we want to stay competitive with other CMS. Yeah, but to reach that, maybe we have to create a big picture for UX. Yeah, but what is with the users? They use TYPO3 for a long time, and they have some expectations and yeah, established habits. And what is with them when we change the whole interface? So yeah, we couldn't start also not from scratch, because yeah, TYPO3 is a long product, yeah, and it takes a long time to build everything new. So yeah, maybe we have to do only small improvements. And another question is also who is involved in the improvement of the TYPO3 backend UX. So with whom we have to talk when we like to improve it. At first, for example, there are the core members, like core framework mergers or core component mergers, and also the product lead, who influences the TYPO3 backend. And second, there are also TYPO3 initiatives and teams who are influences with their work the user experience. For example, accessibility team, UX team, form framework initiative, headless initiative, structured content initiative, yeah, or dashboard initiative, for example. Yes. And last but not least, there are a huge part, the TYPO3 community also influences the UX of the TYPO3 backend. Because every TYPO3 designer, integrator, or developer, yeah, influences with their changes directly the impression of the user or the editors. And there's also another problem. When we discuss UX stuff, we are also getting quick into a discussion about opinions and assumptions. Because maybe someone else has totally different experience with their users than you. So we have to be open for other opinions and point of views. Yeah, and so far we are only talking about challenges we have to take on with the UX of TYPO3. And now I hand over to Rachel.
Thank you.
She would present us some plans we have.
Thank you, Annett. So, first of all, please do not consider that the UX topic has just started in the TYPO3 ecosystem with the creation of this UX team, because the TYPO3 community took this aspect very seriously since a long time. For example, TYPO3 UX weeks were organized since 2014 to 2018. It switched to a more global initiative week in 19. And by the way, that's how the actual UX members met. We met in the Structured Content Initiative, UX subgroup. So even if we started to work years ago, the UX initiative was founded only last year, and we became an official team only this year in April. So you can easily recognize me and Annett in this photo group. So I am the UX team lead. Annett is the core merger for the user interface component. She's also the Structured Content Initiative bridge. Paul Hansen is the co-lead and the accessibility team bridge. And Benni, as the product owner, keep us on track with the other core developments. So is our core team bridge. So this bridge system is intended to keep consistency, UX consistency between the teams and initiatives. That doesn't mean that you necessarily need to be member of the UX team to be a bridge. That's what we did, for example, with Lina Wolf. She's our documentation team bridge, so we can contact her or she can contact us only if it's necessary. So let's talk about the TYPO3 UX maturity. When you want to evaluate the UX maturity of a product, you can evaluate it through 6 different levels, from the absent level to the user-driven statue, and through also 4 axes: UX strategy, culture, processes, and outcomes. So when we founded the UX team, we can say that TYPO3 was at level 3, the emergent level, which is a very good level, considering that it's an open source project, and which didn't have a dedicated UX team. So, of course, there were no global picture, UX global picture, but the UX was always considered as a nice to have feature. So the developer naturally took care about UX in their developments of new features or improvement. UX tasks were not included in the existing process or workflow, and there was no metric to track the results. So our first step is to move from the level 3 to the level 4. That's why we founded the UX team, and we worked on a UX global picture. We are also working with the core team to include UX tasks in the workflow, and we have to set up some metrics and user testing to track the progress of the implementation with us. So when we do that, the level will be structured, but not integrated. So we will also have to work further and reach the level 5 and the level 6. So what do we mean by building UX strategy? To handle the execution part of a product user experience, we just need people, tools, and processes, and then we can fix some UX issues, or improve existing features, or react to existing problem. But without a UX strategy, we are missing the meaning of the execution. So we can eventually improve on independent pieces of the user interface, but even if we can make a very good list module or a translation system, it won't make a good content management system as a whole. So the strategy is the foundation for the meaning of the execution. So we have to first create a UX vision to tell where the UX is going, and more importantly, why. Then we can set goals and see how do we get there. And then we can make plans and decide who does what and when. So how the TYPO3 user experience should be. If you go to the typo3.com or .org website homepage, the first word you will read will be professional. And it's a very important word because this word is creating some expectations. So that means that users should have a professional experience when they use TYPO3. How can we translate that into content management? When we think about professional, we mostly think about a high-quality product. So that can mean that the generated content should respect standards or best practices, maybe are secured out of the box. In general, the user can trust the information that is displayed because the tool doesn't mislead. We also think about productivity, because when you are professional, you have to be productive. And that can mean that the user should be able to handle a big amount of website, languages, pages, or even editors. And of course, we think about efficiency, because the contents are the added value of the editors. So they must be able to create them in a fast and easy way. So if we sum it up in one sentence, we can say that the users should get more results, but with less effort and less time. And that's a pretty good news, because it's exactly the same definition for sustainability. And we know that today, nobody will want to work with a tool that doesn't take that topic seriously. So what is the TYPO3 big picture then? Helping the user to manage content in a professional way, it's very good. But guiding them to adopt good practices and become real content management professional, it's much better. That's the difference between being just a tool and giving solutions to do a work, and guide the users and help them improve themselves in their daily tasks. I don't know if some of you have already heard about Kaizen, but if not, I will give you a very short description. It's a Japanese word that means change for better. It's a continuous improvement set of methods designed to make big changes or important changes, but with very small steps. The 5S is one of Kaizen tools. This technique is designed for efficiency and productivity, but while working in a pleasant working area. So we have to be very careful with that kind of methods, because if we just apply them literally without common sense, it can really become a creativity killer. So we will just take that as an inspiration and translate these methods to content management user experience. So let's have a look to the 5S. The first is seiri. So it's about giving up the useless. For example, we want the editors to stop keeping their content and to hide them instead of deleting them. The second S is about ordering the useful, so it's the next step. For example, a user should have his module that he uses the most often, more accessible than the others. Seizo is about keeping a clean and fresh working area. So in terms of user interface, there is no virtual dust to clean, so we can translate that more in keeping a fresh look and feel. Seiketsu is about creating standards. The standards will help the user following naturally the good practices, and of course, if the user stop messing their backend, they won't have to clean up the mess after that. For example, we can imagine that a developer or an integrator could use ready-to-use components to build his own module that respect the standards, so that the editors won't mess their backend because of a badly designed interface. Shitsuke is the last one. So when you have done the 4S, you can sustain the cleanliness of your working area. So it's more about tracking the situation of your backend and also getting naturally used of the good practices. We can totally imagine some dashboard widget doing that work, because a widget could retrieve the records that haven't been used for a long time and suggest to have a look at them. UX work is always about concepts. So the first thing we did was to find categories or thematics of concepts to store them and to align them with the goals we just described before. So the first one is called Keep the House Clean, to help the user stop messing up their backend. The second one is better use of space, to help them working more efficiently. And the third is keep a fresh look and feel. So it's more about UI design and being always fresh and modern. Another longer-term task is to build progressively a design or component system for the developers and the integrators. And at the end, the dashboard widgets could finally make sense. And we could have a lot of good ideas for the widget because we would have some data to track and to suggest to the end users. So you can see that the 5 S are hidden behind this organization. So how do we work? The first thing we do to create a concept is to work on a problem to solve. If your concept doesn't solve a problem, you may not improve the interface. Here is an example of a problem to solve. During a lot of discussions with developers, customers, we all agreed that our end users are not deleting their content, and it's a real problem because if they don't delete their content, they are cluttering themselves, their interface. So they don't find anymore their data. And we really started to wonder why they have this behavior. Because when you find a problem to solve, the first step after that is to find why the end user have such a behavior. So to find why, you can talk with the customers, you can make some UX research. That's what we did, and we came to this conclusion. Deleting is a very scary thing for the end users. And it's normal because, as I said before, the data is their added value. So it's not natural to delete what they created. For example, it can be the evidence of my work. I spend a lot of time to create a content, and I want my boss to see it as long as possible because I am paid for that. So deleting is not an easy decision to make. And sometimes you can keep the contents just in case because you don't know if you will need it later. And of course, the more you keep everything everywhere, everything is lost in the middle of nowhere, and you keep the content just because you don't know it's there. So it's a lot of reasons why they don't delete, but the most important is that they think the deletion is permanent because they don't know there is a recycle and a field deleted, which is Boolean, and everything is still in there. When you make some research outside the TYPO3 world, you see that there is a lot of tools that have exactly the same situation. Maybe you can meet some people that have a lot of email in their email box and never delete them, or files. It's exactly the same problem. So when we understand the why, we can start working on the concept. So when we work on a concept, we always start to fill that kind of table. It's a table with 10 usability heuristics implemented by Nielsen and Molish UI design guidelines. So it's just guidelines, and when you have a concept, you just have to fill this table. It's very interesting and helpful because you can you don't forget some existing problem, and you can also check if your solutions are consistent. And when you have finished to fill that kind of table, you can start to do some mock-ups. So here is an example. It's just a small part of a solution we are working on for the deletion issue. So here is the scenario. I am a user. I am in the page module, and I have a hidden content because it's in draft mode, and I will publish it later. And you have a useless content in the right column, and I should delete it. And I don't have the recycle because it happens a lot. It's just not activated, or I don't have the permission to have it, so I don't know that there is a recycle. And I think that if I delete things, it's permanent. So, the third, yes, it's happening. Yeah. So first, I click on the Add More Content button and click on the Delete button. And I have a scary message. Are you sure? So I'm not sure. And then maybe I step back and I choose to hide my content because I don't know what will happen. So what we propose first is to change a little bit the naming. And the label of the button could be moved to recycle, for example. And the recycle could be always activated, even in the top bar, because it's a very important feature. And when I click on Move to Recycle, instead of a modal, I can have a top right message with retention information and an undo button to retry if I just change my mind at that moment. So we want the user to hide for good reason and to remove the content just in case. So what about changing the switchers labels to their real purpose, like publish and publish or go live, go draft, and the checkbox show draft content. We can have also a more unlink button, an additional button, to just add this content to the unused content and see that list. And we can also have a checkbox to show them or not. And then you have now 3 ways to handle your content and to decide if it's just because you are in a draft mode, because you want to keep it just in case, or you want to delete it, but you know that you can retrieve it. Maybe you can have a retention time of 1 year. It can be setable by the administrator. And you have good practices now. You can see that there is no new feature. Everything is already in place. It's just a different way to represent things and guiding the user in the good direction. So, as I said, it's just a small part of the solution. There are a lot of other things we have to work on with the deletion. I also wanted to say that if you are interested in that kind of feature, the step after that is to implement a pilot and put it online and make some user testing to discover if the ID were good or not and maybe improve them. If you are interested, we can create a group at the coding night to code this little concept. Also, what we did so far, because we are not just doing that kind of concept, we are producing some UX materials. So we did a lot of personas for editors, developers, integrators, and the different initiatives can use them if they want. We even created some personas for accessibility improvement. We also benchmarked, first we did some survey. Those survey was to first gather and speak with data. We also benchmarked some competitors and then created a lot of mockups and IDs. We also created a pilot to show the result of some IDs. And thanks to Snowflakes, this pilot is online and anyone can test everything. And this system will support our user testing workflow. And I switch back to Annett.
Thank you. Okay, as Rachel mentioned, a lot of topics and a lot of things. Perhaps you ask yourself the question, how do you fit in here? So, yes, I want to mention that you have to be aware that even there's an official UX team, you are always part of it right now. Yes, because even if you are a developer who's creating a backend extension or an integrator who's configuring the backend for the or the interface for the users, yeah, you always influence the UX. Yes, as we said before in the slide, who influences the TYPO3 backend UX. So, what can you do? For example, as a developer, you can use existing elements and use the official style guide extension when you do some backend user interface. Or as an integrator, you can think about the editor workflow, and even if your user interface is consistent, for example, over the content elements, the pages, and also, yeah, are there too much elements the editor see? It's also a problem. And if you are not sure, don't be afraid to ask us. Yeah, you can use the Slack channel from us. It's xig-ux. Yeah, and we could answer your questions if we had enough time for that. And we are always, or every time, interested in discussions about your experience with your user or your editors. So don't hesitate to come to us and yeah, get into discussion. So, and if you found some inconsistency in the current behavior or the user interface, yeah, please inform us. I know some of you did this before in the UX channel, and it helps us to find some places where we can do small improvements fast. So, and also we need you. Yeah, so become an official part of the TYPO3 UX team, yeah, and help us to create the best user experience our customers and users deserve. So, that's all from us. Thank you. Okay, now it's time for your questions.
Thank you for your talk. Do you have any ideas on how to get actual end users involved in the process? Because a TYPO3 integrator, he knows the system in and out. He knows where to find things. TYPO3 developers, they don't work as editors. They don't see the problem. The one that really sees the problems is the actual end user, and those people putting in content every day. And do we have some way to integrate those people into the process? Because I think they would be the ones who have the most input.
Yeah.
Would you like to answer?
Yeah, thank you. There is two kinds of end users that we could include in the process. Our customers that are already using TYPO3 and living the problems and not seeing them but living them. It's not really the same thing, because sometimes they are just accepting them and they don't tell us. So there is that kind of user, and also the users that never use TYPO3, just the rest of the world that we want to reach. So yes, there is a system to make them in the workflow. It's called user testing. That's the reason why we made that pilot. If we put that pilot online, then we can use, there are some websites for that. You can have some end users of your own, your customers, or end users that are paid for that, and you give just a little scenario, and there is a movie of what they did, and they say aloud what they are living, and then you can get the result. It's not asking the opinion of the end users, because unfortunately the end users doesn't know what they need, they just know what they want, and it's not really the same. But making some user testing and having the movie of the result help us to discover things that we never guess. And it's really important to have the result of the actual users and users that doesn't know TYPO3 anymore at all.
Okay. Now.
Do you meet in a regular base in your team, and is there a designer also in your team, or multiple designers that are working on creating the visual aspects of the UX decisions you take?
You want to answer?
I can. Okay. The UX team itself has a monthly call in Slack where we meet. But yeah, Rachel and I also work in the Structured Content Initiative, and there are every Monday a Slack call. So we had time to interact between us. Yes, and we work together with some agencies. They are not official part now of the UX team, but they also offers us some designers. But we always interested in some resources. Yeah, because we are we are not enough people to do the whole stuff. Yeah, we only create the concepts in first place, and then we need someone who's designing the things.
Yeah, there is two separated topics. The fresh look and feel can be handled by a separated team, because first we don't want to change the place of everything. That's not the point, because it would be too much work. But also because the UX is good. It's we don't say that the TYPO3 UX is bad. It has to be improved, but there are very good concepts already here, so we don't have to change them. And as you saw, the mock-ups are absolutely design agnostic. It's not, we are focused only on the user experience. And then those two teams can work separately and just meet together to see if we are consistent.
Yeah, and also in our thoughts, it's more an agile process in iteration, so that we always getting a step back and look and test, and after user testing, we go in the concept and so on. Yes. Other questions? That's not the case. So yeah, we also had some important links for you or some information. Maybe we can share the slides afterwards, and yeah, you will can after that show. Yeah. Look. So thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Before you leave, please take a minute and rate talk. I will be waiting at the door, and for your ratings, we are the small paper pieces. Thank you.